The first time I noticed Chloe's reaction to a message on her phone, I told myself it was nothing. Just a text from her stepbrother, Ethan, someone she'd mentioned casually over the years. But it wasn't the message itself that caught my attention. It was the way her face softened when she read it, the way her eyes lingered on the screen for a moment too long before she quickly tucked her phone away, as if hiding something she didn't want me to see. That's when I felt it, a cold, creeping unease that whispered the woman I married wasn't the woman I thought she was. The silence in our house has become a heavy thing, a suffocating blanket woven from unspoken words and growing distances. It wasn't always like this. I remember a time when the air in our home vibrated with laughter, with the comfortable murmur of shared secrets and dreams. Now, the only sound is the rhythmic ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall. Each tick a stark reminder of the time slipping away, of the chasm widening between Chloe and me. I often find myself looking at her, really looking, trying to reconcile the woman beside me with the girl she once was. She grew up in Pennsylvania, a place she always painted in hues of golden sunlight and gentle breezes. Her stories of childhood were idyllic, filled with the warmth of loving parents and the simple joys of small-town life. She spoke of a deep, unbreakable bond with her mother, a woman who taught her how to bake apple pies that filled the house with cinnamon and love, who held her hand during camping trips under a sky full of stars, whispering stories of constellations. That was the Chloe I fell in love with, the woman whose past seemed to radiate an inherent goodness, a foundation of unwavering love and security. Then, the darkness came. She was 14, a tender age when the world should have felt limitless. Her mother's passing was sudden, a cruel twist of fate that ripped through their perfect world, leaving behind a gaping void. Chloe rarely speaks of that time, but when she does, her eyes still hold a flicker of the profound grief, the raw loneliness that followed. Her father, a quiet, gentle man, was equally devastated, and they clung to each other, two shadows in a suddenly empty house. That loss, I always believed, shaped Chloe in profound ways, made her appreciate the fragility of happiness, the preciousness of connection. It was a part of her story that drew me in, a testament to her resilience, her ability to find light even after experiencing such darkness. Lately, though, the light in her eyes seems to have dimmed. There's a guardedness about her, a subtle shift in her demeanor that I can't quite place. She's become more distant, her phone constantly buzzing with messages she shields from my view. Our conversations have become perfunctory, filled with polite inquiries and surface-level responses. The easy intimacy we once shared feels like a distant memory, replaced by an invisible wall that grows taller with each passing day. Last night, she came home late from work, a new project, she said, demanding extra hours. And when I reached out to touch her, her body felt stiff, almost resistant. I told myself it was just exhaustion, the stress of a demanding job. But a seed of doubt, tiny yet persistent, had already been planted in the fertile ground of my unease. It's a feeling I can't shake, a cold dread that whispers in the quiet moments, suggesting a truth I don't want to face. Something has changed, and I fear the idyllic picture of our life together is about to be irrevocably shattered, much like the perfect world Chloe lost so many years ago. The unease from last night has festered into a gnawing anxiety that shadows my every thought. I keep replaying the moment Chloe walked through the door, the unfamiliar scent, the subtle resistance when I touched her. It's like a puzzle piece that doesn't quite fit, forcing me to examine the other pieces, the ones I thought I knew so well. My mind drifts back to the stories Chloe has shared about her life before me, the years after her mother passed. It was a difficult time, she'd said, a period of quiet grief shared with her father. Then, for years later, just before her 19th birthday, her father remarried. It was a significant change, a new dynamic that brought a stepmother into her life and a stepbrother named Ethan, who was 2 years younger. Initially, Chloe described feeling awkward, unsure of her place in this newly formed family. It was an adjustment for everyone, she'd explained. But as time went on, she and Ethan, being closer in age, started spending more time together. They discovered shared interests, a love for old movies, a similar dry sense of humor. She'd mentioned late-night talks about their dreams and frustrations, the kind of easy camaraderie that can form between siblings, even step-siblings. But sometimes when she spoke of Ethan, there was a certain softness in her voice, a hint of something more than just familial affection. I didn't think much of it at the time. He was her stepbrother, after all. But now that subtle nuance in her tone replays in my mind, amplified by my current suspicions. She told me about their shared passion for photography, how they would spend hours wandering through local parks, capturing the changing seasons through their lenses. There was a particular story she recounted about a time they got caught in a sudden downpour during a hike. They'd huddled together under a large oak tree, laughing as the rain plastered their hair to their faces. She described the moment with a vividness that now feels unsettling. Was it just a shared memory between step-siblings, or was there something more beneath the surface? I remember another instance, a casual mention of a family gathering where Ethan had understood a joke that no one else did. Chloe had laughed as she told the story, but now I recall a specific detail. She'd said their hands had brushed as he handed her a drink afterward, and she'd looked at him, a silent understanding passing between them. At the time, it seemed like a sweet anecdote about their bond. Now, it feels like a potential clue, a subtle indication of a connection that might have been deeper than I ever imagined. The more I think about it, the more these seemingly innocent memories take on a different hue. Could there have been an unspoken attraction simmering beneath the surface of their step-sibling relationship? A forbidden connection that grew stronger over time? The thought sent a shiver of cold dread down my spine. Just then, Chloe's phone, which she left charging on the kitchen counter, buzzes with a notification. It's a message. My heart pounds in my chest as I glance at the screen. The sender's name flashes. Ethan. The message preview reads, "Thinking of you. Hope you're having a better day." It's a simple message, innocuous on its own. But in the context of my growing suspicions of the memories I've been replaying, it feels like a punch to the gut. A seemingly innocent message from a stepbrother, or something more. My hand trembles as I reach for my own phone, the urge to delve deeper, to uncover the truth, becoming almost unbearable. The message from Ethan on Chloe's phone has opened a floodgate of suspicion. I can't ignore it. It's a small thing, perhaps easily explained away, but it resonates with the unease that has been growing inside me, amplifying the subtle inconsistencies I've been noticing. I find myself drawn to her phone, a forbidden fruit on the kitchen counter. I know I shouldn't, but the need to know, to understand the source of this growing distance between us is overwhelming. Later that evening, after Chloe has gone to bed, I succumb to the temptation. Her phone is unlocked. My fingers hover over the screen, my heart hammering in my chest. I scroll through her messages with Ethan. They are frequent, filled with inside jokes and casual updates about their days. Nothing overtly romantic, but there's an underlying intimacy, a closeness that feels inappropriate for step-siblings. Then I find it, buried within a series of older messages, dating back years, is a conversation that stops me cold. It's from a time when Chloe's parents were away on a trip. The messages are between Chloe and Ethan, and the tone is different, charged with a palpable tension. "Thinking of you. The storm is getting pretty bad." One message from Ethan reads. Chloe replies, "Yeah, the power flickered here. It's kind of cozy, though, just me and the sound of the rain." Ethan's response sends a jolt through me. "Wish I was there to keep you company." Chloe's reply is a simple emoji, a red heart. My breath catches in my throat. This is more than just friendly banter. I scroll further, my hands trembling as I read the subsequent messages. Ethan, I can't stop thinking about you, Chloe. Chloe, me too, Ethan. It's complicated. Ethan, I know. But being near you, it's getting harder to ignore. Chloe, I feel the same way. Then, a message from Ethan that hits me like a physical blow. Remember that time we almost kissed in the living room when Mom and Dad were away? Chloe's response is a string of nervous emojis, followed by, "Don't remind me. We shouldn't even be talking about this." Ethan, but we are. And I can't help but wonder, what if we had? There's a long pause in the conversation. Then, Chloe's reply. Maybe one rainy evening we'll find out. The date on these messages corresponds to a period when Chloe's parents were indeed away. My mind races, trying to piece together the implications. Had that almost kiss actually happened? Were these messages just innocent flirtation, or did they lead to something more? I continue scrolling, my stomach churning with each message I read. There are veiled references to secret meetings, stolen moments when their parents weren't around. They talk about the thrill of their secret, the fear of being discovered. They describe feeling drawn to each other in a way that transcends their familial connection. One message from Chloe is particularly damning. That kiss, it changed everything. I know it was wrong, but I can't stop thinking about it. Ethan's reply, me neither. It felt right in a way I can't explain. We just have to be careful. The pieces are falling into place, forming a picture I desperately don't want to see. The stolen glances, the subtle touches, the unspoken understanding I sometimes glimpse between them. It all makes sense now. Their connection wasn't just a close sibling bond. It was something forbidden, something that crossed a line. I feel a wave of nausea wash over me. The woman I love, the woman I thought I knew, has a past I never could have imagined. A secret, passionate relationship with her stepbrother, hidden beneath a veneer of familial normalcy. Just as I'm reeling from this discovery, a new message pops up on Chloe's phone. It's from Ethan. The message reads, "Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Same time, same place." My blood runs cold. Tomorrow? Are they still meeting? The realization hits me with the force of a physical blow. This isn't just something that happened in the past. It's still going on. The forbidden romance never ended. The knot in my stomach tightens, and a cold fury begins to simmer beneath the surface of my shock and disbelief. I have to know more. I have to find out what's really happening. And I know exactly how I'm going to do it. The message on Chloe's phone, "Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Same time, same place," replays in my mind like a broken record. Tomorrow. Same time, same place. Where? And what exactly is still going on between her and Ethan? The discovery of their past affair has shaken me to my core. But the implication that it might be continuing, even now, is almost unbearable. I try to reconcile this new information with the Chloe I know, the woman I married. Our story began a few years after she finished college. She'd mentioned a stepbrother, Ethan, but always in a casual, almost distant way. She'd said they were close growing up, but he had moved to the city to attend an art institute she'd said roughly 18 months after her parents' trip. That timeline always seemed to fit. We met shortly after that, at a local bookstore of all places. We bonded over a shared love for classic literature, long conversations stretching into the evening, the kind of easy connection that felt destined. I remember feeling so lucky to have found her. She was intelligent, kind, and had a quiet strength that I admired. She spoke openly about losing her mother at a young age, the profound impact it had on her life. She mentioned her father's remarriage and her stepbrother, but it always felt like a chapter of her life that had closed. Ethan was pursuing his art, living his own life in the city. There was never any hint of anything untoward. Our relationship progressed quickly, but felt natural. We fell in love, got married, bought a house in this quiet suburban neighborhood, started building what I genuinely believed was a happy and stable life. We talked about the future, about having children, about growing old together. All of it felt real, solid. Now, that foundation feels like it's crumbling beneath my feet. The messages I read on her phone paint a completely different picture, one where her past with Ethan wasn't neatly closed off. If their affair started while her parents were away and continued for 18 months until he moved, what happened then? Did it truly end? Or did it just become a long-distance secret? The message about meeting tomorrow suggests the latter. But how is that possible? How could she have built a life with me, seemingly so full of love and commitment, while still harboring this connection with her stepbrother? The cognitive dissonance is jarring. I feel like I'm living in a carefully constructed illusion. I try to recall any instances, any subtle clues I might have missed. There were times when she'd receive a text and her face would cloud over, but she'd always brush it off as work-related. There were occasional weekend trips she'd take to the city to visit friends, but she was always vague about who she was seeing. Could those trips have been to see Ethan? The thought sends a cold wave of dread through me. I remember a conversation we had shortly after we started dating. She was talking about her stepbrother and mentioned how close they used to be. She'd said, "We went through a lot together after Mom died. He was really there for me." At the time, it seemed like a normal expression of sibling affection. Now, in light of what I've discovered, those words take on a much darker meaning. Went through a lot together. Was that an understatement? The more I think about it, the more inconsistencies I find. Little things I dismissed as insignificant now seem like potential red flags. A certain look in her eyes when Ethan's name came up in conversation, a slight hesitation when she talked about her past. Just then, I remember something else. It was a few months after we got married. We were looking through old photo albums at her parents' house. There was a picture of Chloe and Ethan, taken around the time he was preparing to move to the city. They were standing close, smiling at the camera, but there was a way they were looking at each other, an unspoken intimacy in their eyes that I hadn't noticed then. But now it's crystal clear. It wasn't just a sibling bond. And then another memory surfaces. It was during our engagement. Chloe received a phone call, and she stepped outside to take it. When she came back in, her eyes were slightly red, and she seemed a little distant for the rest of the evening. When I asked her who it was, she simply said it was an old friend. Could that call have been from Ethan? Was she already torn between us? The weight of these revelations is crushing. I feel betrayed, confused, and utterly heartbroken. The happy life I thought we had built feels like a lie. And the message on her phone confirms my worst fears. The past isn't just the past. It's still very much a part of our present. I have to know what's happening tomorrow. I have to see for myself. And I realize with a chilling certainty that my life is about to change forever. I will follow her. The weight of what I discovered on Chloe's phone has created an invisible barrier between us, a thick wall of unspoken accusations and gnawing uncertainty. I didn't follow her the next day. A part of me couldn't bring myself to witness what I already suspected. Instead, I watched her. I watched her every move, every subtle change in her expression, trying to decipher the turmoil I knew must be raging beneath the surface. Our anniversary is next week. It's supposed to be a celebration of our love, another milestone in our happy marriage. But the thought of it now fills me with a cold dread. I see the effort she's putting into planning the dinner, the reservations at our favorite restaurant, the carefully chosen gifts she's been hiding. Is it all a facade? A way to mask the guilt of her ongoing deception? I've noticed her becoming more withdrawn, more introspective. She spends more time lost in thought, her brow furrowed, her gaze distant. There are moments when I catch her staring into space, a look of profound sadness in her eyes. Is she thinking of Ethan? Is she regretting her past? Or is she simply burdened by the secret she's been keeping? The tension in the house is palpable. We move around each other like strangers, careful not to touch, careful not to linger too long in each other's gaze. The easy banter and comfortable silences we once shared have been replaced by a strained politeness, a fragile truce in a silent war. I know she feels it too. There have been times when she's looked at me, her eyes searching, as if she wants to say something, to confess. But the words never come. The secret remains locked within her, a heavy burden she carries alone. I've considered confronting her, laying out the evidence I found on her phone. But a part of me is terrified of the truth, terrified of shattering the life we've built, even if that life is based on a lie. What would I do if she admitted everything? Could I ever forgive her? Could we ever go back to the way things were? Our anniversary dinner looms closer, a date that now feels more like an impending judgment than a celebration. I can see the internal battle raging within Chloe. The happiness and stability she has found with me are undeniable. I know, deep down, that she loves me. But the pull of her past, the unresolved connection with Ethan, seems to be a powerful force, one that continues to haunt her. Yesterday, I overheard her on the phone with her friend, Sarah. I couldn't make out all the words, but I heard enough to understand the gist of the conversation. Chloe sounded distressed, her voice tight with anxiety. She mentioned our anniversary, and then she said something that sent a shiver down my spine. I don't know what to do, Sarah. It's eating me alive. Should I tell him? Should I finally tell Jasper everything? There was a long pause, and then Chloe continued, her voice barely above a whisper. It happened years ago, but it feels like it was yesterday. And now, with Ethan still in the picture, I just don't know how much longer I can keep this hidden. She made plans to meet Sarah at a local coffee shop this afternoon. I watched her get ready, her movements nervous and agitated. As she left the house, I felt a wave of conflicting emotions, sadness, anger, and a strange sense of resignation. Now, hours later, I sit here alone, the silence in the house heavier than ever. I know where she is. She's pouring her heart out to Sarah, wrestling with a decision that could change the course of all our lives. Will she confess? Will she finally reveal the secret that has been casting a shadow over our marriage? The future feels uncertain, hanging in the balance of a conversation happening miles away. Whatever she decides, I know that our lives will never be the same. The weight of her past, a past I was never truly a part of, has finally caught up to us. And as I wait for her to return, I can't help but wonder what the future holds and whether the life we built together can withstand the weight of the truth. The quiet ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall seems to echo the frantic beating of my own heart, each tick counting down to a moment of reckoning. The ending of our story, it seems, is finally about to be written.